Joe Hockey, welcome back to 7:30.
Great to be with you, Leigh.
The Democrats are having the first of their votes this week in Iowa to figure out who their presidential candidate is going to be. Who do you think they're most likely to go with, and how do you rate that person's chances against Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's a really open field. We haven't seen Bloomberg come into the field yet, but he is spending an unbelievable amount of money. Pete Buttigieg was a surprise winner, it appears, in Iowa. And certainly Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have momentum. So I think it's got a long way to play out. As for taking on Donald Trump, it's going to be a formidable campaign. Donald Trump's narrative is enviable for anyone that understands politics. He says, look, the economy's in great shape. I've created all these jobs, plus I've made America stronger militarily. I've taken on some of the trade injustices. His narrative is very strong.
Under Trump, the US has taken an isolationist position in trade, a pretty go-it-alone approach in foreign policy. It's pulled out of the Paris Accord on climate change. Trump on Twitter constantly displays his narcissism and other unflattering character traits. Has he cost the US its moral authority around the world?
Well, I'm not sure about moral authority. I think it's had an impact on the convening power of the United States, their ability to get allies to come on board in certain circumstances. But look, all of those things, Australia has quietly but disagreed. We disagreed on pulling out of TPP. We disagreed on pulling out of Paris. We disagreed with them on pulling out of the JCPOA with Iran. And we've disagreed with the United States, but we do it in a way that doesn't try to humiliate the United States or humiliate the president.
But nonetheless, if America under Trump is having trouble building alliances around the world and doing things with partners, that does erode America's influence in the world. And given our history with the US and our relationship, we presumably would think that that is a bad thing.
Well, we get disappointed when there's anything where the US reduces its engagement with allies and friends. But the US is also now, more than I've ever seen, defining what the world should look like over the next few years, and that's particularly in relation to China.
Why do you think the US is the one defining that?
Well, because the US has not had both a military challenger and an economic challenger in the one country. And at a leadership level, the United States is very focused on taking on that challenge and defining the world as those that are with us or against us.
Let me ask you about the UK's decision last week to allow the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei access to its 5G network. Australia and the US barred the same thing from happening on national security grounds. How do you think the UK going the opposite way might affect intelligence sharing between the three nations?
Well, that'll be up to the United States. I mean, clearly the biggest collector of intelligence, arguably in the world, but in our hemisphere is the United States. And if they don't have faith that the UK's systems are solid and reliable, then they'll just start to reduce the amount of information they provide. You know, we need to protect the Australian people. The Americans are protecting the American people. You have to ask the question whether the UK is doing the same.
How was Scott Morrison's leadership during the summer of the Australian bushfires perceived overseas?
Well, I think the wave of sympathy out of the United States and around the world for Australia was the starting point. Others will make lots of commentary about whether the Prime Minister or anyone else did a good job. Everyone's eager to form a final view about the performance of a Prime Minister or anyone else, but the bottom line is they do their best. And the thing is, I'm sure Scott Morrison knows that he's got more work to do.
Do you think that ministerial standards are at the same height that they were 20 years ago?
Oh, I mean, it's all changed, Leigh. I mean, social media has changed everything. Social media has made the voice of the critic much, much louder than the voice of the advocate. And the second thing that's changed is disruption. Everyone keeps calling for government to initiate reform, but really what's happening is the private sector is initiating reform on a scale that we've never seen before. And the role of government is to get out of the way.
Isn't there something fundamentally wrong with that, though, if government's not leading?
No, I think because it empowers individuals, and we all believe that individuals should be their best. And if individuals are coming up with great ideas, to create jobs, to build wealth, then let them go at it.
But the private sector can only do so much if the government policy settings aren't right, if you don't have good settings on competition, productivity, energy policy, all of it. There's constraints on the private sector.
Yeah. Well, you've got to fine-tune those policies from time to time. But the fundamental role of government is to make sure that trust works, that you can trust your financial system, that you can trust your privacy, you can trust the information you provide. And I think that's the primary role of government now, unlike 20 years ago when, or even 10 years ago, or 5 years ago when I was Treasurer, people said, what are you doing to reform the economy? Well, I think we've moved into a phase where governments just need to be the safety net, need to protect people, but at the same time allow the disruption, which is painful for communities, but you can't hold it back.
Joe Hockey, thank you.
Thanks, Leigh.
Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.